Perek Hey Halacha Aleph, beginning Perek Hey of Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. Ein also mishum Chometz Pesach el hamisha mini dogen b'uvad. The only things that are also on Pesach are the 5 different types of wheat. Let's go down to the Peirush. We'll learn what the 5 different types are, and whether you can, when you're not allowed to eat wheat or barley, for example, can you mix them together? And with regard to what do they add up together? And what are kidneys, which Ashkenazim don't eat certain beans, which can be used to make flours, or certain growing things that can be made flours from them. Flour. The Peirush says, "Ein also mishum chometz pesach el hamisha mini dogim b'lvad, ve'im shnei mini chitim, she'ein achita v'agosemes." There are 2 types of wheat. Wheat has 2 types, chitim and gosemes. Shloshim mini asoirim, and 3 types of barley, she'ein asoira, which is barley, v'shibol shul, which I think is corn, oats, shifon, which is rye. And gosemes is a type of wheat. It's called. It's in the wheat family, closer than the barley family. Now, how do you combine 2 different amounts for truma and with shiur, challah, and isur kloim? Rae Gann Family says there's a difference between truma. It's also to take from something, one type of species onto another type. But you can take from chitin and kusmin and kusmin and chitin, because they're both chita. But you can take also from sa'irim or shibul shoyer or shifon on sa'ira, because they're the same types. So too, as far as challah, the isa, the part of it is from one is chita, one part of it is sa'ira, wheat and barley. You can add them together if they are either in the wheat family or in the barley family, as it says in the Mishnah in Challah Perek Daled Mishnah Beis. And so too, by Klein, that you're not allowed to be permitted to mix 2 types of species together. And chita and gosemes are one species, therefore you can have them in the same field at the same time, growing. So too, barley can be grown together with shibul shoel and shifon. The Amach has a question. Gosemes is also considered a type of sa'irim. We find this in the Yosef and Challah, Perek Beis, Halacha Gimel. Gosemes koismim mitzdarfim with sa'irim to the shiur of Challah, because gosemes is a type of sa'irim, and therefore he explains that according to the Rambam, gosemes is also a min chitin. He writes, how do you mix them together? If they're all from one type, chitin that touched in other words, by challah, a dough of wheat made out of grain of flour from wheat, touched with a flour that is made out of kusmin, they are considered enough to obligate. If it touched other groups, it doesn't get together. Vice versa, sa'irim that touched kusmin, it would be considered they do add together. So we see that gosemes, according to the Rambam, is both a species of wheat and a species of barley, and that's how Rabbeinu Tam is also the same opinion. What's kidneys on Pesach? Kidney is like rice or doichen, millet, or pulin, and certain types of beans, vadoshim, and lentils. Others of their type, ein be'em mishum chometz. They don't have a din of chometz. Even if he made flour out of it, beroischin, he did it in hot water. He saw begod nashenitpach, and he covered it with garments until it rose, so to speak. It's not called chimutz, but rather spoilage. It's not called chometz. That's why rice has a different din. The Maggid Mishnah cites the Mishnah in Psochim 35a. These are those items which a person can use that type of flour for obligation of matzah on Pesach. Then, and he fulfills his obligation. Wheat, barley, kusmin, which is spelt, we said. Shibula is shoyel, which is corn, shifon, oats, and shifon, which is rye. So the Gemara says that you only eat with a matzah that's made from these 5 different types, but anything that's made from either rice or millet, they're a type of kitnius. It's called kitnius. You're not yoitza. The Gemara says, how do you know you're not yoitza? So learned to be Shmuel. So learned to be Elazar Yankiv. It says in the Torah, Lo yisechel lo chometz shivas yom torah lo matzos lechem oini. So matzah is the same as chometz. To tell you, only those items which come to be chimutz, and you have to watch it. Pesach. But they don't become ever fermented, but rather they come to spoilage. You're not yoytze b'hem yedei choyve on Pesach. The Maggid Mishnah cites that even the flour that's made from wheat, grain, flour that's made from beans or, and remember, lentils, and they're a type of bean, even though they blow up, that's not called chimutz, it's a sirchon. You're not yoytze with it, and you're not chayiv on it because of chometz. Because according to the Rambam, you can eat kidneys on Pesach, even if you made a bread from them, because you don't have chimutz or sirchon. You don't have fermentation, but rather spoilage. Rabbeinu Manoach brings in the name of the Sefer HaMenogos that the whole world didn't eat on Pesach kidneys. Why? Because they look like they ferment. Therefore called chimtza. They have a din of they called chimtzos. Therefore they don't use chometz. It doesn't seem so. The minik totally is beiso. The minik can't be because they call it chimtzo. And the reason, it says samach b'chagecho. Eating kidneys doesn't give you simcha, but there's no isa chometz. And even though we find in the Gemara that behemoy oif that fell into a high place, into stones or kidneys, were afraid that they broke their limbs, and there chimtza is mentioned, which is called feishlush cheftzis diresh. There's no suffix that if he wants to eat these type of vegetables from the types of beans on Pesach, you can do so. There's no issa, even though people didn't eat it. It says in Yerushalmi, everything that we don't know what it is, you can eat it. You can, and it'll ask if you can eat lentils. You can eat lentils, technically. Rabbeinu Manoach cites that he found the reason you don't eat kidneys on Pesach because there's one that's called weitzes. And they're a species that is made from the kernels of the wheat that is different than the kernels of the actual chita. And we find in the Mishnah that when you don't have a good year of rain, so the tuah comes out differently. When the chita doesn't grow big enough, but afterwards it returns to being wheat. And zunin comes to the lotion kizono tiznach ha'oretz, that the earth, in a sense, has become adulterous, that it went off the way. And when it's raining, it becomes wheat again. So we see zunin is a type of wheat that could become chometz. It's also a pesach because it has chimutz. And people make a mistake between that and think that you can eat other types of things that are not usually made, wheat is not made from, and therefore they forbade all of kidneys, and that's the reason he does agree to this thought. Rather than the name chimtza itself, the fact that you can make a mistake it for a type of wild wheat. Halacha l'maisa the Shulchan Aruch paskins. These are the things that you can be yoytze with them: matzah and the chitim. The next page, and which is wheat and soirim and kusmin, shibboleth shel v'shifim. The 5 different types of grain. So Amos says that a minig is to take kamachito. That's people who don't have a problem with gluten. There today that have people have a sickness of celiac, and they can't. Their body doesn't consume flour, and therefore they have it from other types of grain. Rye matzah. Mechaber says, but not with. You can't be yoytze with rice or other types of kidneys because they do not become chometz. You can even use them on Pesach. So Rambam says v'yesh oischim in Ashkenaz. The minig was us, and the minig in Ashkenaz is to be machman not to eat it. The Mishnah Berurah cites the reason is because sometimes a kidney is you'll have it growing in a field where there's also wheat, and you can't check it out for sure, and therefore we're afraid of the smallest amount as we learn of Chometz in a mixture because it to be also. And it's furthermore, sometimes you make bread, and there are those that can't tell between this flour that's mutter, the kemach of the 5 species, and they can't differentiate rice and kidneys. And therefore, Chas v'Sholom will come to say you can eat bread as well, made of wheat. Therefore, they said anything that can be made into bread, even if it's made from rice or kidneys, it's also. And Halacha cites that there's one, because something's called Weitzes, because of the name. The mice when they Ashkenaz don't eat any kidneys for Pesach. When they Sfard permitted, they eat rice and they eat corn, which they Ashkenaz, American corn, which is maize, which the Minig Svardim Ashkenaz is not to eat them.